Today we're going to talk about some verses that you love, but do you really know them? I have brought in the expert, literally Dr. Kevin Grasso. You're a biblical scholar, linguist, the co-founder and CEO of Biblingo.
All translations are interpretations. It's not necessarily bad, it just is.
Ephesians 6:12. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood. As a Sunday school Christian, just thought that meant there's some bad guys out there.
If Paul wanted to say that we wrestle with sin, he would have said we wrestle with sin.
Why didn't he just say, like, demons?
Demons are real spiritual beings.
Wow. Whew, this is good.
Hi, it's Cass. I wanted to first start off by saying thank you for listening. I created this because I could not find it anywhere else on the internet, and it takes a very small team and a large upfront investment to make it all possible. I really hope that you find it valuable. I would never expect anything from my listeners, and I'm always going to do my best to first outsource support from brands. However, if you do find value in this episode, I invite you to contribute an amount equal to the value that you have received, either through a one-time or a monthly donation linked in the show notes below. I understand that not everyone, though, can donate monetarily. So I ask that if you love biblically speaking and you cannot donate, please show your support by subscribing to this channel wherever you're listening so that it tells the hosting platform to show biblically speaking to more curious and confused Christians. In exchange for the support, I personally promise to you to always create the highest quality production possible. Thank you so much for listening. Now let's get to the show.
Hello. Welcome to Biblically Speaking. I'm your host, Cassie Blino. Today we're going to talk about some verses that you love, but do you really know them? Do you read them in the original translation and you know how they were said with the original intent? I don't. And so I feel like there's a lot of verses that I've been reading wrong. What do they actually mean in Hebrew? What do they actually mean in Greek? I have brought in the expert that can do all the translations for us. Literally, Dr. Kevin Grasso. You are beyond just knowing translations, you're a biblical scholar, you're an author, you're a linguist. You also have a PhD in Hebrew language from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where you spent 5 years that we were just talking about. You have a master's degree in linguistics. You've focused on the biblical Hebrew verbal system. You have a master's degree in comparative religion. You focus on Paul and the Second Temple Judaism. And this has led you to become the co-founder and CEO of Biblingo, which is an innovative platform that essentially allows you to read the Bible in the original Hebrew and Greek. Welcome to the show. This is going to be fun.
Thanks, Cassie. I'm also very excited.
So language kind of seems like it's taken over your life. Why did you choose that?
Yeah, honestly, the original sort of impetus was just trying to understand the Bible. So I got into theology and, biblical interpretation and realized that, a lot of the sort of theological discussions that people were having were really about what Greek words and Hebrew words meant. And so if I was going to engage seriously in those kinds of conversations, I needed to learn those languages.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Was there any big surprises that you kind of learned along the way of oh, people don't know this, or people have been getting this verse wrong so much?
Yeah, basically every day that happens to me. So honestly, it's been something where, as I have, gotten better and better at these languages, I have realized more and more just how influenced I am personally by my own English translations. So, you grow up, you're reading a particular translation, which all translations are interpretations necessarily. So and it's not necessarily bad. It just is. And so I'm reading it through someone else's understanding. And so when I go back to the original, I often just see things in a different way. And so it honestly is hard to even quantify. It's just a completely different experience of reading the Bible, really.
Well, I'm excited to have that experience of myself because what we're going to do today is a classic biblically speaking format. I'm going to read a couple verses and I'm going to try to represent the general understanding of it. When I read this is what I thought. They don't really go much deeper in church. How should I? Let's clarify it. And we'll get through as many as we can in the next 60 minutes. Starting off, we're going to start with Ephesians 6:12. Ephesians 6:12. This one's a classic. And just with all the work on demons that I've done, I feel like I kind of understand what's being said, but I'll try to go back to how I used to read it. Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces. And that's in the ESV. So before I did all that demon work, on understanding, kind of where this might have come from and like the unseen realm. I, as a Sunday school Christian, just thought that meant there's some bad guys out there, you know? For we don't wrestle with the bad guys here on earth. We wrestle with something bigger than ourselves. I feel like that's like a pretty, generic understanding of it. Is that what the text says?
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right that there's a tendency to sort of like make these cosmic powers and authorities just more tangible, or things that we know in our Western culture. So this like vague general idea of sin or evil or something like that. But you are exactly right. I mean, these words. I mean, if Paul wanted to say that we wrestle with sin, he would have said we wrestle with sin, right? That's just not what he said, right? And so the question is, what do these words mean, and how do they function in Paul's Second Temple Jewish context? And in that context, demons are real spiritual beings, and they have power to influence humans. And so because of that, you have to resist that through, what Paul says is pale, to wrestle. It is a wrestling match. And so this word is also used, for example, so this is the noun. The verb is used in Genesis for, Jacob wrestling with the angel, right? And so it's the same kind of idea of you wrestling, struggling with these cosmic powers that are trying to have influence over you. And so to him, it is a very real, tangible thing that's happening every day. But yeah, to us, I think you're exactly right. We normally we don't understand the like truly spiritual dimension of what's going on.
So if he was, it's implying that he's wrestling with these demons. Why didn't he just use a word like demons? I think that's what always threw me is the rulers, the authorities, the cosmic powers. Like this type of understanding for it made it seem like it wasn't demons. Why didn't he just say like Legion was, they say demons there. Why weren't they saying demons here?
Yeah, so I think what Paul is trying to bring out is the fact that they have power and influence. So a text like Jubilees 15 is a good example of this. So Jubilees is a work written before the New Testament time, probably second or third century BC, and it's about it's kind of like a retelling, sort of the story of Genesis and Exodus. So it's Moses receives the it's Moses' reception of, basically other teachings, okay, from Sinai. And in Jubilees 15 it says, but he chose Israel, he being God, that they might be a people for himself, and he sanctified them and gathered them from all of the sons of man, because there are many nations and many people, and they all belong to him. But over all of them he caused spirits to rule, so that they might lead them astray from following him. But over Israel he did not cause any angel or spirit to rule, because he alone is their ruler, and he will protect them, and he will seek for them, and at the hand of his angels, at the hand of his spirits, and at the hand of all of his authorities, so that he might guard them and bless them. So the idea is that there are Israel, right, in context of Jubilees, is guarded and has a certain authority over them, namely God, right? And so that is distinct from the authority or rulers of the other nations, which have spirits ruling over them that are leading them astray from God. And so that's, I think, exactly what Paul is picking up on here, is that these other spirits, right, are the rulers of Gentile nations. And if you were a Gentile, that's what you were being ruled by. And so if you come into the people of God, right, you are now wrestling against the things that once ruled over you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually connecting way more dots than beyond translations. Because
Yes.
that whole theory, like out of Babel, where like the spirits were sent out after Babel, and that's like a whole other episode, and I've covered that in other episodes. I didn't realize that there was a Jubilee verse that was essentially confirming all of that. Essentially saying like, hey, those spirits that we did send out that did lead you astray, that you do honor as a Gentile, absolutely is bringing you farther away from God. Like, oh my gosh, that's like where other religions began. That's so crazy. Okay. Oh, I love this clarity. I love when it all complements each other.
Yep. Yep, for sure.
So Paul's being literal here. This isn't like a metaphor. This isn't like we're talking in a euphemism. He's directing demons. And I guess my other question, and I don't know if this is like something you can answer, is did people talk about demons openly like this, or was he kind of saying like, "Hey, did you guys know there were demons?" Or were they were like, "Oh yeah, the demons that we know about." Like, what was the
Yeah.
context?
No, I mean, I think way more openly than we do today. I mean, I think, and you obviously you see this in the Gospels themselves, right, where demons are just part of life, and you cast them out, and they might come back, and whatever. So I will say, the question of like, literal versus metaphorical, like it's not literal in the sense, in the same way that like Jacob wrestled with the angel, right?
Okay.
Like there was a being there that Jacob was like, grappling, like physically grappling, right? And so I think this is, honestly, I think the literal versus metaphorical distinction is sometimes not always the most helpful one, in that like it is actual literal wrestling. But it's not physical wrestling, right? And so there are actually spiritual forces, right, that are grappling for the Ephesians um obedience, right? And they have to actually wrestle with them, but it is not wrestling like you would watch on television, right? So that's, I think um I would want to say it is real, a real struggle, a real physical, or a real uh actual struggle with these demons, but it's not a physical one in the same way that you might think of as wrestling.
Interesting. Okay. I think we're going great. We're doing great on time. I'm going to keep going and we'll hit the next one. First Peter 2:24. I'm pretty sure I have actually spent a little bit of time on this in an episode with Dr. James Sedlacek. He also does a lot of linguistics, but this one is pretty common. I mean, he bore himself he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness, by whose wounds you have been healed. Just as a blanket reaction, what's the big deal? Like I feel like that is literally what we believe in as Christians, of like, yeah, he died for our sins, and that is why, he gave his grace to us. What is the big ruckus about it? Like, what about this? Is it because they call it a tree and not a cross? To me, there's no problem with this verse. Why is there misconceptions about it?
Yeah, I think there's several things going on here.
Oh,
So one is the toxulon, so that is the tree piece. So that's the Greek word for tree. Interestingly, I mean, this word, so it's also, quoted by Paul in Galatians 3:13, right, where curses anyone who hangs on a tree. And so in that context, I think it's basically the same context in First Peter here, right? Is the idea is that it's a reference to Deuteronomy 21, and it is basically saying that the person who hangs on a tree um, has taken on the covenant curses. So Deuteronomy is a treaty. That is our understanding of it. Covenant treaty. It's an agreement between God, Yahweh, and Israel. And so the part of the stipulation of that agreement is that Israel obeys. And so if you know they don't, right, they would be cursed. So this would just be part of that curse, right? Is that you would hang on a tree. This has a lot to do with again, just more background information. Like it was seen as bad to not have your body buried. So for example, David says to Goliath, the birds of the heavens will eat your carcass, right? So that was a bad thing to them, to not only be killed, but also to have your body not properly buried or disposed of. So to hang on a tree, right? You would be cursed, because you would have the birds come and eat your body, and you wouldn't be properly buried.
right, right.
Um, and so here, like, in this context, it's clearly drawing on imagery from Isaiah 53. And then the idea is that, the Messiah has taken on the covenant curse for his people. There's a lot. So that's one thing. Okay.
Okay.
I will say just the this word tree is actually, there's another word in Greek that I would normally think of as tree, dendron. This is xylon. It's more properly like wood, but it's also used for like the tree of life. So it's there's a lot of resonances of this word with a lot of different things in the Bible. All kinds of things going on. The other thing is, so the big question is like, okay, Jesus is cursed on the tree, or on the wood, right? Which makes, like I said, that makes the resonances with the cross like fit better. But the question is like, what does it mean to do so for sins? So I think that, so there's a number of like ways you can do this. But I think in this context, the idea is not really about forgiveness as much as transformation. So the phrase "te dikaiosunes desomen," like we will live in righteousness. Again, I don't even know what the ESV. We might die to sin and live to righteousness.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is that you are transformed. Right. You die to sin, and you live differently. You now live righteously because of the sacrifice that Jesus made. Again, we normally think of Jesus sacrifice forgiveness. I would say that in this context, it's more Jesus sacrifice transformation, and I would say that's honestly the normal kind of context of Jesus sacrifice, but that's a whole nother discussion as well.
Okay, that okay, there's a verb here that says basically translates bore, what it means in Greek. Is that like what role is that playing here? That he bore our sins.
Yeah. So again, this is the this word is the word that's often used for like offering a sacrifice in the Old Testament. So you can say something like "anenen ken," to probaton. So it's he brought the sheep, right? So this is the word brought, and so this is where some of the debate has been, that like, how exactly do we understand like what's being brought, right? So the problem is like, tas hamartias, the sins, our sins, is most likely referring to actual sins. They also, in theory, it could also refer to sin offering. That's the same word. But I think it is actually referring to sins. So while it is picking up on sort of like cultic language and offering things on an altar, right? So you could bring a sin offering to an altar, on an altar. So in this case, something's being brought, sins, and then the upon is on the tree, right? So I think it's picking up on all this cultic language, but it's transforming it to say that basically Jesus brought this offering of sin onto the tree, right? The reason why I would like want to be very, very careful with that is offerings, like sacrifices, are not ever sinful, right? They're unblemished. They are, they're not supposed to be tainted in any way. So while I do think it is picking up on these sorts of images, I don't think it's envisioning like this death in a sacrifice in the same way that the Old Testament sacrificial system does sacrifices.
I want to take a minute and say thank you to the recording service that has made this podcast possible, Riverside. When I started my podcast, I had literally no idea what I was doing, and I just wanted a single way to record, edit, and share content without wasting time on different platforms. Then, a friend suggested Riverside to me, and I'll tell you what, it was literally an answer to prayer. With just one login, I can record my interviews with scholars, clip interview moments into Reels for Instagram and TikTok, and post directly onto my RSS feed and Spotify, all without the extra downloads, platforms, all of it. So for the curious and confused people like me, the best part is that the crew at Riverside actually listens to their users when they need help. I wanted an editing preset to save time on creating reel templates, and they listened. They literally implemented a new feature. And since using Riverside, my social clips have reached over 1 million people each month. And I haven't even unlocked all the features yet. Live streaming is going to be next. So if you're considering starting a podcast, or you just need to edit at a pro level for content or interviews, I cannot recommend Riverside enough. If this is helpful for you, I ask that you click the affiliate link I provided in the show notes description. It costs nothing extra to you, and it gives a small kickback to me, which helps the channel stay alive. Thank you so much. Now back to the show. Okay, that definitely adds a lot of context. Okay, I think we're doing great on time. I just want to make sure we hit all the right ones, so I'm going to go ahead and skip to Psalm 137:9, and
Fun.
spice it up a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm sure, maybe you're a Christian who just opened up the Bible and you see this guy and you see, blessed shall blessed shall he be who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock. What?
So you tell me, what do you do with this this verse?
Killing babies, it's honorable. Blessed be the ones that actually take it up. And I don't know. This is crazy. Like, there has to be more context before and below. Like, we've got to sandwich this in here that this is just one verse that, this has to be satirical. This has to be facetious, unless it's honoring kind of like the infanticide that you see with Moses and then at Jesus's birth. Like, that's like the only context I have without any further explanation.
Yeah, so I think there's basically two things that you can do with this. Two things that have been done by scholars.
Okay.
One is just to say that the psalmist is wrong. Just so
Do we know who the psalmist is?
No. So here's what we know. If I can just read, I'll read just in English the first part, the first verse. This is the ESV. By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Okay, so this already gives us the context of what's happening, right? This is after the exile. People are in Babylon, and they are remembering Zion. Okay, so this is people who have obviously experienced exile and war and pain, and so it goes on the willows there we hung up our lyres, for there our captors required of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. So they're asked to sing, and they say, we're not going to sing for you. How should we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. Yada, yada, yada. So skipping down to verse 8, just before the one you brought up. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed, blessed shall he be who repays you with what you have done to us. Okay. So now, so the idea is that Babylon has done all these terrible things to them, right? And the person who repays them for what they have done is blessed. Okay. And then blessed shall he be who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock. The idea being that they did it, right? And they deserve that to be done to them, right? So this sort of like very similar to an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? So if again, there are two options here. You can say that this is just it is God's rightful covenant curse coming upon people who have acted wrongly to others first, right? Sorry, I shouldn't say rightful covenant curse, rightful judgment coming to people who have done this to others. Again, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You could also say that the people who are writing were not necessarily right or justified in wishing this upon or in saying that it's actually blessed to do this. So just to back up, whatever idea you have of inspiration, like we know this has to be the case that not everything everyone says in the Bible is true, right? So like Job's
That is
friends.
scary.
Well, so just roll with me.
Whoa, you're unraveling me.
So like Job's friends, right? Job's friends offer him by and large bad advice, right?
Okay,
and that's
true.
just okay. It's reporting something, right? And so this is part of the problem with the Psalms. It's not a problem, but just it's a different kind of literature. It's reporting what people are feeling, right? And so this report of what people are feeling may or may not be good, right? It could just be that this person, whoever is writing this psalm, is obviously, well, they obviously are very upset, right? And um, they are unwilling to forgive, and unwilling to look past or pray, love their enemies, right? In a way that is in a way that would be honoring to God, right? So that's just it. Just is, right? It's not right or wrong, right? The Psalms often just are expressions of what people feel. And so in that sense, again, the point is not it's not endorsing. I think any way you take it, it's not endorsing dashing little ones against rocks, right? It's saying either one, that this psalmist is is expressing a feeling that is not necessarily good, or two, that the psalmist is expressing a principle of you will be judged in the way that you acted before, right? Which again, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth thing, like
it feels
that's very
very
common.
Old Testament, because then Jesus comes and he's like, "Let your right hand know what your left hand does, and turn the other cheek." So is this
Right.
common? Like, is that just how people were lamenting back then that God was okay with? Like, I think there is an element of like, sure, they're wrong. Nobody's endorsing this, but that is how they were allowed to feel enough in a way that they were being represented, in written form. So God's like, yeah, like that's how it was back then.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I do think again, this is something you have to be careful with, but like, it does seem like in the Sermon on the Mount there is a distinction between, we used to say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but now Jesus is saying like you actually shouldn't do that anymore, right? You should not just repay people back the wrong that they've done to you. And so I do think that it's okay again to say, well, that's the principle reflected in this text, but it's not a principle that Christians should abide by necessarily, right? Because that is based on the command we have from Jesus to love your enemies, right? I think it is very difficult to square that text with this text. And again, I would just say that that's okay. They're doing different things. At the very least, this is not a commandment, right? No one's commanding anyone to do anything here. It is an expression of a feeling, right? They think that that it is good for Babylon to be repaid in this way, in the way that they treated them. But that feeling is not the same as being commanded to do that.
Okay, that's fair. Um, is this okay? So this is more of like a trauma that they are kind of let being said, because that is how they were sharing how they felt in the time of amidst an exile, as anybody
Right.
would.
Right. Exactly. They had their kids dashed upon the rock. Blessed is the one who does the same thing to Babylon. Right. Again, it's not it. I would encourage people to not make a value judgment about whether it's right or wrong, but just to say that this is like if you're reading someone's journal, right, and they are expressing how they're feeling, like it's not right or wrong, right? It's that's not the point, right? The point is like, this is how bad exile is. This is what we're feeling, right? We want these people destroyed because this is what they did to us.
Running my own podcast, I'm always moving too fast. I'm finding guests, I'm editing episodes, I'm creating reels, or guesting on other shows. Not to mention, I just live in a world that moves fast. Notifications, trends, endless to-do lists. You know what feels like a blessing in all that? Slowing down. I'd love nothing more than a moment to pause, be present, and choose something timeless. That's exactly what Dwell Label is all about. When I first discovered Dwell Label, it wasn't just about the clothes, it was about a mindset. Thoughtful, intentional fashion that doesn't scream for attention, but instead invites you to slow down. Their pieces are modern takes on classic styles, made to last, not just for the season, but for years. I love that I can throw on a Dwell Label outfit for editing in a coffee shop, Bible studies, or looking professional in an interview. It always feels right, comfortable, effortless, elevated. And here's the best part. Dwell Label does not just talk about rest. They live it. Their website literally doesn't work on Sundays because they believe in pausing and dwelling on what matters most. So if you're looking for high quality, timeless fashion that aligns with a lifestyle of intention and presence, I can't recommend Dwell Label enough. Shop Dwell Label with the link in the show notes and use my code BIBSPEAK15, BIBSPEAK15 for an exclusive discount at checkout. Take a breath, slow down, and dwell in the good things. Now, back to the show. Okay, that's fair. Okay, I'm gonna go forward with second. I think I can like fit in like 2 or 3 more, so I'm gonna.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you want.
Okay, 2 Corinthians 12:10. I feel like this is a good one because if you're an early Christian, you look at this and you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? What? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And like, this is the almost, I always like to call this, and I say this with love, the masochistic Christianity, where you're like, I love when it's hard. Because, and like, because God gets to show up. Like, that's the ending of that sentence. But 2 Corinthians 12:10 is, for the sake of Christ, then I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, I am strong. I feel like that's just positive thinking. Just keep it together. It's like, is there something that like it's simply, is it just that? Like, what am I missing here?
I mean, it could be. There again are several things going on. The one thing I would point out to begin with, this first verb, that I am content. I think content is too weak. So this is the same
Okay.
verb.
It's a weak translation of it, you mean?
Yes. So like, it's not a strong enough word. So eldoko is the word. This is the same word that's used in like Mark, for example. This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. Right? It's eldokesa. It's the same word. So well
That's
pleased.
way
Right?
deeper than content. Like, I am proud of.
Yep. So I would say, so honestly, I think that verse is also mistranslated. I would say that it's better to understand it as approved. So like the idea is that the Holy Spirit falls on him. This is my beloved son. I approve of him. Right? This is the guy that I've approved of. It's not
That's
a
totally
reflection
different
of,
than well pleased. Well pleased is like, we
yeah.
made a contract and he's fulfilled it, and I'm pleased with his work. I approved is like stamp of approval. We're moving forward with
Right.
this one.
Yes, I think that's exactly what's going on. So it's just
Wow.
before Jesus starts his ministry. So the whole point is that Jesus is in front of the crowd, at near John the Baptist and his crowd, and God wants everyone to know that this is the guy. I approve of him, right? And so this is the same word. So content is really, like I said, it's too weak, right? You could say like I approve of or I accept, right? So again, the point is that it's not just a feeling of like contentment. In fact, I would say it's really not a feeling. It's really not about feeling, and there are plenty of examples of this verb where you you don't feel good about what you're accepting. And so the point is that you might not like weakness and insults and hardships, persecutions and calamities, but you might still accept them, right? You accept them. Why would you accept them? You accept them for a greater good. I mean, it's like, you know, no one, I mean, if you, I don't know if you like work out or are into the fitness
Yeah,
world at all,
love
but
love working
so
out.
great. Yeah. So I'm very much in that world as well. And so, like, if you do a really hard workout, right? Like, and if you like really like destroy yourself, you can do that, right? And no one really likes that. I mean, you can push yourself to the point where um no one's having fun anymore. Like, it's fun was a long time ago, and now I'm just feeling pain,
Oh, I'm
right?
feeling pain
Um,
right now, like from days ago workout. So it's even like
right,
I'm still destroyed from a workout the other day.
right,
You're like, I
right,
still
exactly.
can't walk.
Right. Right. So like, but you do that because there's a greater good. Right? So for the sake of something else, I will do that. I will put myself in those situations. And so like for when I am weak, then I am strong. The point is not necessarily like um the point is like when I experience those things, I get more of Christ. I get stronger. When I experience pain when I work out, I get stronger, right? And that's good. I know that end is better than me experiencing pain in the short run.
That
And that's
makes
exactly what
that makes the
Paul is
ending
saying.
make sense. For when I am weak, I am strong. So I think I was reading
Exactly.
it more like for when I'm weak, I'm strong. Just kind of like positive thinking. But then it's like for when I go through these weaknesses, it's therefore giving me the strength to be strong in the future.
Right. Right.
Okay,
And it's
yeah,
because I'm doing it for the sake of Christ, I'm getting more of Christ in those situations, right? And so I I accept those things, right? I accept that small pain in order to get stronger.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna sneak in a couple because I want to end on which one? Isaiah 7 because that feels very Christmassy.
Okay? Yeah.
And we're recording this, a week before Christmas. But I feel like let's do Deuteronomy 6:5 because I feel like any Sunday school Christian would be like, got it, know it. And so let's clarify it. Do we actually know it? Is you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. What are we getting wrong here? That seems pretty straightforward.
Am I allowed to back up and do Deuteronomy 6:4 and because I think
Absolutely.
they go together. Okay, okay. So I think okay, so this is probably the most famous verse within
Right.
Judaism today. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad is what in Hebrew. Here it's normally translated. This is the ESV. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Okay. So I think that this last one is really problematic in the translation. So it is true that if you were to just like copy and paste English word, Hebrew word, this is what it would be. Okay. But it's not always good to do that. And I think it leads to misunderstandings. So I think
Okay.
that echad is better translated as the only one. So the whole point is, and there's a number of reasons I can give for that. But the whole point is it's listen, Israel, the Lord or Yahweh is our God. The Yahweh is the only one. Meaning, you should not be loyal to any other God. Right? Yahweh is the only God that you should have and be loyal to. Okay? So in that context, then the you should love the Lord your God, right? What is love in this context? It's loyalty. And this is very common in ancient Near Eastern treaties, where if you like two kings that made a treaty together would use this kind of language
Oh,
to talk about their loyalty, their devotion to the other king, right? It doesn't mean they had this like feeling of like, oh, I love you, right? It means you were loyal, right? You were willing to protect
what?
and do
Sorry.
whatever you said.
Just to
Go
put it
ahead.
in context, so this language makes sense for us because we're talking about the God that we love. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. That to me feels appropriate to turn to a God that you serve and say that. How you're saying this is the language that kings would use? How would a king say that to another king if they were like pledging loyalty?
Well, the point would be that this love language is not necessarily always like a feeling, right? If it is just, it is language of loyalty, and so it can be used without the feelings, right? If one king is saying to another, "Hey, we have this covenant. I'm gonna love you," right? It doesn't mean that they like have these like great feelings for the other king. It just means that like they will be loyal to them insofar as the covenant has stipulated they are loyal to them,
I just imagine
right?
like two kings on the phone and they're like, I love you. And he's like, I love you too.
I love you too. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Except they didn't have phones, but yes, they would write in
Details.
tablets and send it to them. So 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 just to point out here that like this love language is drawing upon this covenant idea, and the one language before is saying the same thing, right? So it's not talking about God's oneness or like uh I wouldn't say it's talking about monotheism either. It's talking about how Yahweh should be the exclusive God of Israel, right? And so then the question is, what does this look like, right? It means that you should be devoted, you should be loyal with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your might. So in these three words, right, there's again a number of things that we could discuss. The heart in Hebrew, I would say this word heart, it just means something closer to mind. It is you know things with your heart. So in English, when we say, "Oh, I know it in my heart," it usually means like you know it in your heart, but you're really wrong, right? You can know it in your heart, but like whatever. But in Hebrew, if you know it in your heart, it means that like it's true, right? Like you don't just know it in your heart, you know it in your mind.
Got
Um,
it. Okay.
so this word heart is, I think, better translated mind. The word soul is again like tricky. There's a lot of different translations for it. Originally, it meant, so like in Akkadian, and there's maybe one instance of this in the Hebrew Old Testament. It could mean throat, and that's kind of like what it originally
What?
referred to. Yeah.
Soul meant throat?
Yes. So it referred to your throat in Akkadian, and the idea is that that's where life is. So if you take out your throat, you have, it's life, right? And so
Oh,
this is often translated life. So if you like take someone's life, you take their nefesh, their throat, their the thing from which life emanates. But it's also then used for like desires, right? So I would
oh,
say here it is um, it is more talking about your desires. So it
oh.
is, yeah. So there are lots of examples where this word is just referring to whatever things you like. Um,
Like your core
and then the
desire
last,
should be for the Lord.
yes, exactly. And then the last word is a weird. It's just so this is actually alluded to in several other places. Um, you should love the Lord your God, and it usually omits the last one. It'll usually say with all your heart, with all your soul, right, or with all your mind and all of your desires, right? Say that would be a better translation. This last one is often omitted, honestly. It's usually translated strength. Um, eh, I There's not really good evidence that it should be taken as strength. Um, in Qumran, so Qumran is Dead Sea Scrolls, other Hebrew writings, right? This word is used for possessions. So some
What?
people have suggested, yeah, that it is, you should love the Lord your God with all of your possessions. And in the context, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. So if you go down to verse 10, and when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you, with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of all good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So the idea is that when you get all of these possessions, right, don't forget Yahweh who gave them to you. Love him with those possessions as well. So really, this the verses after 6:4 and 6:5 kind of explicate what it means to love God with your mind, right? So the next thing that he says is, and these words that I command you today shall be on your mind. How are they on your mind? Well, you're going to talk about them all the time. Teach them diligently to your children, right? Talk about them when you sit down, when you stand up, right? When you're out on the road, when you're not. Bind them, right? So you see them all the time as frontlets between your eyes. So the idea is just that, like, it's on your mind all the time because you actually physically see it. And so the loving the Lord your God with all of your meod, with all of your power, strength, is, I think, better taken as just possessions. Like, all the things that God is going to give back to him.
Wow, so you just like completely transformed this verse, because originally it was, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. It's like, yeah, God's one, and like him a lot.
Yes.
Do it with your soul, do it with your body, do it with strength within your body. Like, that's how I originally kind of saw it. Was like, you love him a lot. He's kind of like within your soul, because I feel like with soul, it's like he's just like a part of me, and then all your might is like, okay, the power that I exert with the life that I live. But you're saying that, okay, so the first is love, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is the declaration that there is no other gods, that there is a
Or that
monotheistic.
there shouldn't be any other gods for Israel. I don't think it's a monotheistic declaration. It is a loyalty declaration.
It's saying there's
That
other
Israel
gods,
should not have any other
but
gods.
you serve this one.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And then you shall love the Lord your God with all the logic that you
Mind.
have, that with your mind,
Yep.
you should know that
Yep.
he's God, and then you should do it with your entire life. You
Your
say your
your
desires.
desires. Yep.
Okay, so with all of the mind, all of your desires, and then with all of your belongings. I feel like I gotta like repeat that a couple of times for it to like really, like, that's like new information. It's gotta settle, but
Yeah.
it's a new way to see the verse. I mean, but it makes total sense. It's not like a confusing idea at all. It's just those are new words to do it with all of your mind, all of your desires, and with all of your possessions to love your God, the God above all other gods. Wow. Okay, that was amazing. This is good. I'm so glad that we're here. Let's go into Isaiah 7:14, because I'm feeling very Christmassy, even though this is going to air after Christmas. But get back in that spirit if you're listening. Is therefore the Lord Himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. I mean, like, as a Sunday school Christian, you really are just like, nice. That's the story. We believe that. Like, there's not much room for confusion is what I'm saying. And so it's like, okay, so he's going to give a sign, there's going to be a virgin, she'll bear a son, and we already know his name. Cool. uh what else?
Yeah. So I actually taught on this in Sunday school last week. Um, I I asked the question, how many people are familiar with all the issues in Isaiah 7:14, and very few people raised their hands. So
Issues.
I will assume that you don't know, or your audience doesn't know, some of the issues going on here. So basically, every one of these words is like problematic in different ways. So to begin with, Hineha Alma. So this is behold the what's normally translated virgin, right? So the Greek translation is parthenos, okay, and that is closer to virgin. In Hebrew, it's more like just young woman. Okay, there's another word for virgin, betula, that isn't used here. Okay, so the assumption would be so it's not clear in Hebrew. Right? It's not necessarily not a virgin, but it is not necessarily a virgin. Okay, so that's one thing. There's been a ton of work done on this particular Hebrew word. Does it mean virgin? Does it mean young woman? Whatever. It more properly means young woman. Okay. Um, let me just back up a little bit. So if you just continue reading, right? So this was part of the thing I told my Sunday school class. If you just continue reading the rest of the paragraph, right, you can tell immediately that this is not Isaiah is not just talking about Jesus at the very least, right? So the next verse, he shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as we have not come since such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. So like this is talking about the king of Assyria,
Talking about a
right?
lot.
It's like yeah, it's not just Jesus. Okay, so that is again what I told my Sunday school class was you're not being more faithful to the text if you uh, only read this out of context, right? The way Matthew reads it, you're being less faithful to the text, right? If you just say like, "Oh, this is a Jesus verse," and Assyria, whatever, you're being less faithful to the text because it is in a context, and it in this context, it is about something that's going to happen with Assyria. Okay, and so that's one thing. This sign that is given, right, is for a specific purpose in Isaiah's day. That being said, it is a sign, meaning it is something that is unique, right? A young woman giving birth is not unique, right? It would certainly be unique for a virgin to give birth. Okay, so that does suggest that it could like the word young woman, even though it doesn't necessarily refer to virgin, the Greek translators did think it referred to a virgin, probably because it was a sign. This is something that unique that is happening right in Isaiah's day. Okay, we're gonna say that it also happens in Jesus' day, right, according to Matthew, but in Isaiah's day, something else is going on. Okay, so the young woman, right? It says halma hara veyoledet ben. So the hara is pregnant or conceive. Okay. In the Greek translation, it clearly points it to future. If you are familiar with Dan McCullen or Bart Ehrman, if you look up Dan McCullen, Bart Ehrman, Isaiah 7:14, they will tell you that this verse is clear in the Hebrew, and hara, the word for pregnant, it means you're pregnant now. Okay, I will just say that is not right. It is not right for multiple reasons. The biggest reason, I mean, I can go into a linguistic explanation, but I really don't have to. Like Judges 13 is the story of Samson, and in the story of Samson, this almost identical phrase is used, and this identical word is used to refer to Samson being born a year later. It is not true that Manoah's wife was pregnant a year before she gave birth to Samson, right? And so it doesn't have to be true, as Bart and Dan would say, that this word needs to be interpreted as like is pregnant currently, right? That's what they would say. They would say that in Hebrew, this means the young woman is present or is pregnant currently, not in the future. Okay, which means obviously that he would give birth very shortly after. As an example of this in English, I can say something like Cassian is Cassian is working out next week, right? Let's say you put it on the schedule, right? You say, oh, she's doing that, right? Totally fine, right? What I mean by that is it is scheduled. It is certain. There's something that's already happened that makes me think that the event will certainly happen. Okay. I can't say something like Cassian is beating her friend at volleyball next week, right? Because I can't schedule beating my friend, right? I can say Cassian is playing her friend at volleyball next week, right? So this is
There's
the
a level of
linguistic explanation.
prediction that's being. Got it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so here it is certain, right? This virgin or this young woman is is going to conceive, right? That is certain, right? And she is going to give birth to a son, right? We just don't know when. It's not predicting when. Okay. So that is one thing that, like I said, you will see other scholars say. The other big thing, well, two other things. In most translations, it says she will call his name Emmanuel, and so this makes sense, right? She is naming the child. The child's name is Emmanuel. Well, if you read Matthew's version, it doesn't say she will call his name Emmanuel, but they will call his name Emmanuel. Okay, so why is that important? Well, in Matthew 1, Jesus is named twice before and after this verse is quoted, right? And he's named Jesus, not Emmanuel. So there was actually a kid. If you read the rest of Isaiah, so if you read through Isaiah 8, right, Emmanuel is referenced. There was a kid named Emmanuel. It was a sign that had to do with, Assyria conquering stuff. That kid being named Emmanuel was named by his mother. The Emmanuel in Jesus is not named by his mother, right? But they, in general, call his name Emmanuel, meaning they recognize him as God with us, which is what Emmanuel means. Okay, but it doesn't mean that that's his name. Okay, his name, he's called by Joseph in Matthew's version, Jesus, right? So Joseph names him Jesus. Okay, so at this point, the question is like, is Matthew making stuff up, right? Is Matthew deliberately changing the text? Well, there is actually textual evidence. So in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it just says vekara, and which means and he will call his name Emmanuel. So the tricky thing about this, so it's not they. I'll say that it's not they. But in biblical Hebrew, he can substitute in for a generic person. So we can say, like in English, we often use you for this. So if you go up to the Temple Mount, you can see the Kidron Valley, right? There's no specific you. I'm not talking about you, Cassian. I'm just talking about a generic person, okay? So in biblical Hebrew, they often will use he for that. So if he goes up to the Temple Mount, he can see the Kidron Valley, right? There's no specific he, okay? So that's exactly the kind of construction we see here in a version of Isaiah 7:14 in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is our earliest actual version. And so Matthew could be just picking up on that version. Oh, it's just a generic. Like, they call his name, people in general call his name Emmanuel. Why? Because he is actually God with us, right? That's the point. So like I said, basically every single one of these words is debated, and there are issues with it. But I would say that Matthew is not doing anything to the text that is sort of irresponsible
Oh,
or
okay.
making things up.
Yeah, it's a nuanced clarification that you provided, but it definitely provides more light as to like how people spoke.
Right. Yeah. And it shows you there's a lot of, honestly, one of the big things I would say is, we all have our own presuppositions and, like, yeah, ways of viewing the text. Um, I don't want to say that Dan and Bart are just like letting their presuppositions determine how they read things. Really, at the end of the day, it's based on data, right? So it's just based on how are these words used, right? And this is, like I said in the beginning, this is why I got into all this to begin with, right? I just wanted to figure out what all these words meant, right? I mean, because if I can, then I can have a better understanding of what the Bible is actually saying, right? The example from Judges 13 is very, very clear. I think once you just look very carefully at the actual text and see what's going on, there are a lot of different explanations out there than what's been provided by them. Like I said, I don't want to speak for them like wanting to read things into the text. I don't think they're necessarily doing that, but I don't think they're correct, right? In how they're reading these texts.
Wow. Wow. Okay. We got through a lot there. That was nice, like five, I think. That was good. Okay. I mean, we have so many left over, so just I have to come back on. Um,
Yeah, let me know.
okay. I've been like, as you were going through this, there's like a burning question in my mind because like you got into this to understand the Word of God. And then you go through these verses and you see like, oh, like with the context, with the translations, they mean something else. So I feel like like you and I are reading different Bibles. Like you read it in context, you read it with the original verb, like with the right verbs of saying like this doesn't mean, with all your heart, it means with your entire mind. It doesn't say with your might, it means with your strength or with your possessions. So do we have different versions of the faith? Like, has this transformed your faith into like, it's almost like, wait, what version are you reading? Like, it's obviously the more accurate one. So, would you say that my version, not knowing what you know, is A, watered down, or B, like askew, like not even hitting the mark? Because, like, how different is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would say it really is like a verse by verse kind of case. So, we picked verses that like, were juicy.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Not every verse is going to be so juicy. But at the same time, um here's what I would say. You by and large can trust your English translations. So I don't want to come across as if um like they can't be trusted. At the same time, it is it is necessary that a translation is an interpretation. Just is. That's just what a translation is. You first have to interpret the original text, and then you have to put it into another language. And so you are trusting someone else to do that interpretation for you. And so the issue is like some of these things are debated, right? Like the love the Lord your God with all your especially like the possessions one, like it's debated, right? About what it can mean, whatever. But you don't get to participate in that debate, right? If all you see is your strength, right? Like I don't know, like that's how it's been interpreted for me. And now I don't know the different options because I can't see what it originally meant, right? I can't see the original word. Okay. So that's I would say I don't want to come across as if you cannot understand the Bible. In general with your translations. However, I do think there are some verses that you will not understand in some English versions, um, given that translation, right? The question, of course, is like, what's the translation? What's the verse, right? Translations are different, right? So like one's right and one's wrong, right? There's not, I mean, and so sometimes there's like, they bring out
Yeah.
different nuances, whatever. But sometimes they are contradictory and they both cannot be right. And so in those kinds
Sure.
of cases, you have to ask yourself like, where is this coming from? And it's coming from the original Greek and Hebrew. And if you want to play the game and figure out like what those words originally meant, you have to learn those languages.
I mean, that's super fair. I feel like I wasn't even asking, like, can you trust the Bible? But you kind of answered it. Of like, okay, like, what am I missing out on? Like, I think that came more from like a place of FOMO, of like,
Yeah.
rather than like distrust. But it is
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
did did something happen that I missed because it was translated in this watered down English way, where like when you read in Greek and Hebrew, there's like the English readers and then everybody else that's like, yeah, they don't even know what they're reading, like this. It doesn't sound like that's the case, but I was just curious. So that is, wow. So tell me about Biblingo. Like, how can people like continue this journey? Because obviously we only touched on 5 verses.
Yeah. So, Biblingo is basically an app designed to teach people Hebrew and Greek. So the whole idea is that we're trying to make biblical Hebrew and Greek more accessible um, through this app. It's both on the web and iOS, Android, and we just think these are languages that anyone can learn. So, my kids are doing it. My 5-year-old was reading Hebrew at 4, and what I would say is like that people. I mean, granted, he's pretty
Granted,
smart.
he's
Like, but
smarter than everybody.
no, he's not. He's not. He's above average. He was reading English, but at that time as well, which is again ahead of the curve. But my point is that he's not above average compared to a 10-year-old, right? He was still 4. And any 10-year-old could beat him in pretty much anything. And so what I would say is that these are languages that can be learned. And we've also had a 70-year-old complete all of our Hebrew lessons, which is a ton of content, and now she's reading the Bible, the Old Testament, in Hebrew. Um,
So
So
how would you recommend using Biblingo? Like, is it line by line, like you read it in the Bible and then you go back to Biblingo and you read it in Greek and you kind of do like side by side comparison, because that seems very time consuming. So how would you recommend using it?
yeah, so it's completely different. So Biblingo is a software designed to help you learn the language. So, for example, the first thing you'll see is, a picture, right? You'll see a picture of a person, and you'll see anthropos, right? So you'll hear the word anthropos, and you'll see the picture of the person. And what you're doing is you're associating the person with the the Greek word anthropos. And so basically that we just teach you words, right, in Greek. Those words become sentences. So we've filmed all of these sentences in Israel, and we basically so we're immersing you into the culture as well, and we're basically like kind of walking you through how a first century child would have learned these languages, right? They would have seen a word. Oh, my dad referred to this word as table, trapezda. Great, that's table, right? And then I see another word, right? Refer to something else as another Greek word, and then those words eventually form sentences. Those sentences form stories, and then those stories could just turn into the Bible, right? I mean, so it's not we're not like comparing English and the original languages as much as getting you to acquire the language in the way that um, children, right, or anyone else would have learned these languages.
Wow, awesome. Where can people access Biblingo? You said it's on the app and it's on the web.
Yeah, so you can just go to biblingo.com, sign up for a free trial, or just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download it and start.
Okay, cool. I'll include a link below just in case you're just like watching this on YouTube or Spotify. You want to sign up right now. But this is like the ideal episode for me. So I'm so grateful that you're able to come on. Let's get you back on to do a little bit more. But thank you so much for all of your, like, just, I want to say your smartness, like your wisdom and your studies, and just being able to do this because, like, you just saved me years of seminary by doing it on in 6 minutes. So thank you. And everybody, Dr. Kevin Grasso.
Thank you very much. Really